Hey guys, Gary over at Renew. Just wanted to show you, this is the latest project I'm going to be working on, and just want to make a little video for you guys. This is a Mel Smilow chair. It has a lot of wiggle, so we're going to definitely need to re-glue the whole frame. We're cutting off, I already started to cut off the rush. You know, it's in good shape overall, but it did show some signs of weakness, so we're gonna have that redone. It's actually, we're doing the frame for a client, so they're gonna handle that part of it. They have someone that's gonna do that for them, so the finished product won't actually be fully finished because we're just doing the frame. But we're gonna get it solid, get it stained and finished, all of that, and then from there it'll go get the new rush installed. But great chair, and we're just gonna make it strong again and give it new life. So there you go. We'll get this rush off and then get to gluing the frame. There we go. All right, got the seat off. Already, this is very dry. This actually was broken underneath the rush. The rush was actually holding this all together. And then over here, same thing. This is delaminating. So this was a laminated, you can see here, this was a laminated piece that they shaped, and then the lamination let go. So one of the reasons why this chair was so loose was because this had let go. So that's you know, you find things when you start to dig. So that was one big issue. Obviously all these joints need to get re-glued. This arm is not doing what it's supposed to. So anyway, let's get the back off, see what we find under there. All right, there's the back off. Nothing really hidden there, pretty straightforward. Just the glue joints are all super loose. This whole chair is just completely loose, which is actually kind of a gift, because that means that the glue is very dry and this will knock apart very easily, and we can clean up the joints and get them re-glued. Again, I've said in the past, we will use hide glue in this case, just because it's reversible and it's more fitting for a vintage piece that's collectible or an antique piece that has value. I prefer hide glue in those cases. Anything structural can be epoxied if it's a really bad break, or anything that really needs to, you know, hold a lot of, you know, needs a lot of strength, and then epoxy might be appropriate just for those cases. But this will be knocked apart, cleaned, and hide glue will be used to get it back together. So we'll move on to the next step. All right, guys, getting ready to knock this chair apart. Now, one thing I want to say, and I say this often, every step of restoration leads to the next step. What that means is the longer and more thorough you are on one step, it may seem like a waste of time, like you could hurry up and get started. Like I could just start knocking this chair apart and feel like I'm accomplishing something. But the problem is that when you go to put it back together, you know, will you get the spindles orientated the right way? Will you get them in the right spot? And it can become a real nightmare if you don't take the time. So this is an example of taking time to make the rest of the process easier. All I've done is gone around and put a piece of tape here and here, and pretty much facing the tape whichever way it's supposed to orientate. So for example, this spindle, I want to make sure that this faces out again, because that's what's facing out now, and it probably fits in the hole possibly better that way. So I marked it with a number to match, but also where the tape is located tells me that's sort of where it should be. Now up here, I put it here and here, and again here and here, and I went around and I just did things that I would maybe want to remember later. Like for example, this is the right arm as I'm looking at it, and this is the left arm as I'm looking at it. Now they could get swapped, maybe it wouldn't matter, but it just saves time. This slat here could get turned upside down, possibly get glued in the other way. Doesn't matter, maybe not, but I just put that this faces up. This curve, could I do that backwards? Probably wouldn't make that mistake, but I wrote front here so that I know that this is the front, and so on and so forth. Just take your time and prepare for what you're about to do, because it'll save you a lot of time down the process as you move forward. So I've taped off everything, numbered it. Now I can take it apart, not have to panic. And if I have to walk away from the project, not a big deal, because all the numbers are there. So even if I had to run today and drop it, I wouldn't have to depend on my memory to remember where everything went. Also, be very aware, like inspect the piece. He's like, right here is a nail. I don't know if you can see that. It holds the arm in place. That if you go to knock this apart, you're gonna break something. There's already a little stress crack right here. So if you go to pull this arm out, that could really create some damage. So be aware and look at that. And there's two ways you could do this. If it's under the wood, one thing you could do is take a punch and punch it down lower, punch it as low as it needs to sneak out through the hole. You could also try to dig it out, and that might cause more surface damage on the outside. So on this one, I'm going to punch it out. The other one was actually kind of proud. It was sticking out a little, so I was able to pull that out with some cutoff pliers. So I'm going to punch this one through. The other one I pulled out. So there you go. Just keep an eye out for those kind of things. Because a lot of times over the years, people will repair things and they'll do it poorly. So they'll just kind of nail nails in on all these joints and try to hold it in place. Unfortunately, new furniture is sort of manufactured that way. They don't depend on glue very much. They just staple every joint and hope for the best. So keep an eye out. Make sure you don't create a bigger problem for yourself than you already have. All right, so you can see there in that hole is the nail, and I punched that through instead of, and you can see on this side it's poking out. It's a little proud on this side, the point. So now I can pull that out of that arm, and I did minimal damage. There was a hole already, so now there's just another hole. I'm gonna fill this later and then just kind of grain paint that, color it. You really won't notice. But if I went at that trying to dig it out with pliers or something like that, it would create all sorts of ugly damage around it. Or if I just tried whacking it out, it could potentially just split this whole back support, which would be not so good. So I punched it through. That worked really well. Now time to take the chair apart more. So it's kind of coming apart on its own. Well, that was quick. There you go. Now it's an IKEA chair. No, it's not. This is a Mel Smilow chair. It's going to be really great when it's finished, and now I just got to get to cleaning the joints. This is also a great time to sand areas. If you need to take off a number, take it off, sand that area, put it back on so you don't lose track of where things go. But this is a great time to kind of sand some surfaces before it's reassembled. Just get it, anywhere where it would be tough when it's back together, just kind of hit that now. But now we'll get to cleaning up the joints and get it back together. All right, well, that's a lot of clamps. This chair is pretty rough, so had to get a lot of clamps from a lot of different directions. Again, used hide glue on this. Gonna let this set up overnight and then just address some of the other repair issues, but at least it'll be strong and sturdy tomorrow. So that's where we'll leave it for now. All right, guys, back with this chair. I'm gonna take all the clamps off and check it out. Probably have to do another round of repairs, just minor repairs, at least structurally. Now it's sound, so I'll take the clamps off and give it a really good look over and get it through the next round of repair so it can move along in the process. All right, so here's the chair, Mel Smilow. I just took the clamps all off, and now it's nice and solid. That's what you want. Every joint's been re-glued, cleaned, and glued with hide glue. Again, I've shown this in other videos. This is a glue that I really like here at the studio. It's called the Old Brown Glue. It's just a hide glue. And what I do is I just put this in, I have a little electric sort of crock pot thing, and I put water in that, heat the water up, and just leave the bottle inside there, and it keeps the viscosity of the glue nice and thin, and that's how I keep it pliable. Otherwise, it's pretty thick, and it kind of is more like molasses otherwise. So I recommend hide glue because it's reversible. So if you have any glue that you didn't get cleaned off in the glue up, you can heat up some water and with a little elbow grease scrub it off, or with a brush. And also, if you ever have to get this chair apart, the joints will come apart with some heat, and you can clean the joints much easier and give it another gluing. So again, thinking long term with a piece like this, because it's a collectible piece, it's a good piece, taking the time, doing it the right way, that's important when you're thinking restoration. So all the clamps are off. Now I'm going to do round 2 of repairs, and likely I'm going to possibly use some oxalic acid on the wood, and I'll show you what that means if we do end up doing it. I'm going to sand it lightly and see what that looks like first before I make that decision. But oxalic acid is used to it's called a wood bleach, not really to bleach the wood, but to kind of revive the natural color, because this one had really aged and grayed out over the years, so I want to bring back some of the natural color. So we'll see if we have to go to that point, but there you go. Here's where we're at this point. All right, so here is one more repair I have to do. This cross piece here, the original piece, was broken right through here. So yesterday I glued that, but obviously that's a weak spot. So the reason I didn't replace this or pin that or any of that is because it had this back piece. It was originally laminated that glued on there too, and so that's going to create sort of a backbone and take some of the weight off of that brake. The only issue is that it is incredibly bowed, and so I'm going to replace it with a new piece that is not bowed, and that will help to reinforce this brake, and it'll fill in this area that needed to be filled in for the rushing, but we're doing away with this one piece here. I like to keep as much original as possible, but obviously being under the rush and being like that, it's easier to replace it, and you'll never know. Alright, so it's glued on now. Before I glued it on, I rounded this edge to kind of match the original contour, so that when the rushing comes around, there's no sharp edges to sort of over time cut the rushing. So it's important that you have those nice rounded edges, especially for the seat, because you have so much down pressure pulling the rushing against that corner. So a nice rounded corner is important, and it's how it is around the chair. So glue that nice piece of new white oak on there, and again, you can see this is where the crack is, and now you've got this sort of backbone running along the whole stretcher, so that's going to help secure it really nicely. So there you go, just gotta wait for that to dry. Alright, so now I'm just going over the whole surface. I'm actually going over it with a 120, and I'm just doing it by hand, and then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna blow it off, see what needs more repair. There's some little hairline cracks I'm gonna probably feed some hide glue into, just to see if I can prevent them from getting worse, and then just little areas that need to get kind of filled. Here's a spot here, just needs to get filled and shaped a little bit. So I'm going to go around and kind of do this second round of repairs after I do a rough sanding, and then see how the wood looks, see if it needs to get oxalic acid treatment or if it's good to go. Alright guys, back with the chair. Clamps are off. It's been roughly sanded. At this point, I'm going to go with oxalic acid just because. It doesn't necessarily need it, but if you get really close, you could see like there's just some, I don't know, there's some gray. Probably on video it looks better than it does in person. It looks really good. You could probably get away with it, but I'm gonna just hit it with some oxalic acid to show you how I do that, and then from there you'll know. So I'm gonna use it on this chair. It'll help brighten the wood back up to a the kind of the color it was when it was made, and that'll give the final product a better look. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the oxalic acid ready. Alright, so this is one version of oxalic acid. This is what you'd probably find in your store. It's a powder. I only have a little bit left in here, so I'm actually going to mix it right in this cup. There's really no measurement science to it. You want to have enough. You want to see it sort of dissolve in the water. You can make it thicker if you want to put it on a little heavier, like if you're doing a tabletop and you really need to pull a lot of stains out of it. But you need to do the whole surface. If you try to do one area, it'll create kind of a halo effect, and it won't look right. So you really have to do the entirety of an item. Unless it's something like a tabletop, you could leave the base alone. But as soon as you do an area that kind of it connects to another area, you really want to do the whole thing. So I'm going to mix hot water. I have just a little electric kettle here, and I'm going to dump some hot water into this because there's only a little bit left. I'll show it to you. Let's see if I can open it up here with one hand. Alright, so there it is. It's powder, and it's going to dissolve with the hot water, so I'm going to do that now. I'm not going to do a ton because I don't need a ton of it. So I'm going to just mix some hot water into it. And I don't need a lot, and all I'm going to try to do is just wet the whole chair, because all you're going to do is whenever you're doing oxalic acid, you're just spraying it on or wiping it on. You can also wipe it on and letting it dry. So that should be enough to do this chair. Now you want to be careful because the vapor, as you spray it, if you do spray it on, just be careful not to breathe it in, because the oxalic acid, it's not like deadly or anything like that, but it can kind of irritate your nose and your breathing. So just be cautious of that when you're applying it like with as a spray. If you wipe it on, it's not a big deal. And then obviously look out for open wounds, things like that, because oxalic acid will find them. So just be careful. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start getting it all wet. Now you don't have to do obviously where the rush is gonna go. That doesn't really matter because you won't see that when the rush is on it. You want to make sure that you do get everything wet. So underneath spindles and such, make sure you get it under there, because if there's drips or anything, it might dry funny. So just go ahead and wet. You want to saturate sort of all the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up. But wet all the wood, and then all you're going to do is just let it dry. You're not wiping it off, you're just letting it dry wet. Alright guys, so I did the oxalic acid. I let it dry for about an hour maybe. Outside, let it dry really good. Then I just brought it in. I hosed it off. We have a pressure washer to rinse things that we strip. So I rinsed it off really good. That will neutralize the oxalic acid. And then all I did was wipe it down, towel dried it. So I'm going to put it back outside, let it dry, and then pick it up again tomorrow, most likely, maybe later today. So anyway, that is the oxalic acid process. You could also apply again if you wanted to, if you ever have a piece that really needs it. I don't think I'm going to do that on this piece. I think I'm going to just leave it alone because I don't think it's going to get that much better. Right now it just looks kind of wet. It'll dry a little later. So there you go. Alright guys, back at this Mel Smilow chair, all glued up, all rough sanded, all the little repairs and holes and things have been filled and sanded. The only issues I have left here are just, there's a couple of gaps. This chair's sort of warped. It was stored somewhere, I think damp or something. Some of the wood just sort of warped and didn't quite fit back together exactly. So there's a few little gaps like this. Something like this big, I don't usually use regular wood putty just because I'm afraid it will break out more easily. So what I do here is I put a little bit of glue into the joint, and then I actually put Bondo. You can get anywhere, just like a high density filler. You mix the hardener in, put that here, and then I'll sand that smooth, and then I'll just touch this line up later. I'll kind of grain paint that in. So that's the worst one. There's a little gap over here, but not too bad. So that's all I have left, and then I can move into finishing. Alright guys, so I just put some filler in these spots here. That's what it looks like. I'll sand this off in a bit. What I did was I actually, this is something, especially if you don't have the ability to do a lot of touch-up work like grain painting and things like that, I recommend taking the time and trying to mix a color that's close to the wood. Now, when the wood is wet, it's a lot golder, so I could have taken some more time and tried to get this closer, but I also have the ability to kind of grain paint that in later. So I was just trying to get it sort of in the ballpark, because normally Bondo is a bright pink. You can see here, this is what Bondo normally looks like, and then I added in some concentrate. So this is from Mohawk. This color was the blonde, and they have walnut colors and I mean all sorts of colors. So I just used blonde just because it seemed like it would get a little more gold into the Bondo. And now I'm going to let this dry. What's nice about Bondo versus some of the other fillers that are out there that dry hard like Bondo, epoxy sticks and things like that, is that Bondo will dry quickly. So within a matter of 10 minutes or so, I can sand this and keep moving. Epoxy sticks take a couple hours depending, and then other paste fillers like this can take a while also. So Bondo is a good choice when you're trying to move things along. If you don't need to do that, then you can do another product, but that's what I use generally in a situation like this. So all right, so one word of advice. I didn't show this on camera, but this is still curing. It kind of got hard, but it was still sort of soft, and I recommend taking a razor and gently, try to do it very gently, just nip it away. You don't have to get all of it off, but try to get some of it off. Now I actually sanded this as well, as it gets to a point where you can actually start to work it before it's super hard, and then from there it'll cure fully. But if you wait till then to kind of get all of that excess off, it'll just be kind of a pain and you'll waste some time. So take a razor, just sort of slice some of it off, get the heavy stuff off, but try not to go too much, or else you could pop it out of the joint or the part that you're filling, and cause yourself to have to redo it. So just a word of advice, little tip. So I could have definitely gone a little bit darker. That's all right. I can hand paint that later using the same powders. You mix it with a little of the finish you're using. On this, I'll be using a satin lacquer. But you could see this could have gone darker to match either this color, which would probably be your best bet. That way, it sort of looks like part of this dark end grain portion, or you could have tried to match more of this. But if you wet the wood a little bit and get a sense of what the color will look like around it, you could probably get that filler to be a little bit closer. But it's better than bright pink, so it's a nice background color to put some grain through, and it will save a little bit of time. So there you go. All right, got the first coat of clear on it, the sealer coat. Just gonna set up now, get this drying, and then we'll go from there. We're gonna do a few coats on it. We'll do touch up probably next, so we can kind of bury that under the finish as we build it, but we'll do a few coats of lacquer and maybe a little color tweaking, but overall it looks pretty good. So one step at a time. Here we go. All right, guys, working on this touch up here. I'm going around on the chair now and just touching up all the little things that have been filled or just need a little adjustment. So these are concentrated powders from Mohawk. There are just 3 that I chose right now. This is a Colonial Maple. There are, I think that's light walnut, and that's perfect brown. And all I'm going to do now is just come over here and just kind of apply some of that here. I use the lacquer that I'm using on the chair as the delivery agent. Oh, sorry, it's a little blurry. But anyway, I'm just going to highlight this. And I'm just trying to take your eye off of that hard, bright line. So you have this very noticeable line versus this, which looks a lot better. So I might put a little bit of other darker color through it, who knows, just to kind of break it up a bit more. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around and just touch up anything that needs a little adjustment. Hey guys, sorry it's a little loud. I just wanted to show you at this point what I'm doing now is just lightly toning the chair, and you may not see it in the video or not, I'm not sure, but all it is applying some color that's in mixed in with acetone and some of the lacquer I'm using. It's a very thin solution, and I'm just doing light coats just to richen up the color, but not a lot, just a little bit, just to richen up and even out the color. So I'm doing a little toning now. Alright guys, so I've toned the Mel Smilow, just richened up the color a little bit. It's looking really nice now. It's exactly where I want it to be. The toner also helps to just send the touch-ups a little bit further into the background, and from there I will just move on to just a couple clear coats and we'll be good to go. Alright guys, here's the finished Mel Smilow. It looks really good. The rushing is not going to get done by us. The client is actually taking care of that. They have someone that's going to do that for them. So unfortunately we're not going to see the full finished product, but overall the wood came out really, really nice, and I can't wait to see when the rush is put on. And yeah, it's a really nice chair, Mel Smilow. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like the videos. Hopefully we can keep creating more of these and show you how we handle restoration here, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much.